Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. I'm Mike, and today we're going to get back onto the DI project. It's been, look, this morning, it's been a couple of months since we've done a video on the DI, and of course you all know that we've been involved with the little stationary engine and the 430 project. But we're back. It's early in the morning. We're here trying to beat the heat, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be any relief to the heat in sight. So we're trying to do the best that we can. So today, a couple of things we're going to do on the DI project. First, we're going to put to rest the mistake that I alluded to a couple of months ago after my assembly of the fan shaft and the governor and all that stuff about the intake manifold. I've got an update to that. And two, we're going to take a look again at the DI brakes and some of the modifications that we're having to do. As you're well aware, the brake systems on these tractors are fairly rare. The ones on this particular DI are extremely rare because this DI, even though it had individual wheel brakes, did not have any brake pedals. So we're having to do some modifications to some existing parts that we already have in order to make them correct on the tractor. So with that, come along. We'll move over to the bench and we'll get started with today's episode. So the new intake manifold showed up shortly after we posted the last video, and I made some studs to fit in there, and thankfully I was able to manipulate it to where I could install the studs along with the manifold. And I'll show a couple of still pictures here that shows the manifold and the studs installed. So I was glad to have that behind me. Now these studs that I made are not exactly what Deere would have used. All 6 of these holes in the top of this cylinder head are blind holes, so there's no issue with coolant or vacuum or anything coming up through the threaded holes. but the original studs would have had the class 5 thread, the interference thread, on one side. Now these do not, mainly because it would be very difficult to install them with the manifold in place. But I think this will work just fine, and we've got this part behind us. Now we can move on to something else. In the last DI video, I talked about having to modify some parts, and as I alluded to in the previous clip or two, I'm having to work with what I have available here. So if you'll look back at the video, the last DI video, we were talking about the differences in these brake back plates between the tractors that had the axles that greased up on the end of the axle housing versus the axles that greased through the end of the axle. If you'll remember back, or if you want to review back to that last one, you'll see that these holes were not there in these castings. What I have done is went ahead and set this up in the mill and drilled and tapped these grease holes through to the inside of the housing. And I was also able to take them up to my friend's shop and put these into his lathe and machine the grease groove that went from these holes to the axle housing. And we've got some short video clips here of all of that process. When Deere did the modifications and closed up these grease holes in this particular casting, they did change the casting number. And the reason they did is the plates were not interchangeable between the axles that greased at the end of the axle housing versus the one that greased in the end of the axles. So therefore they did change the casting number on this, and that's something we're just going to have to live with. Other than that, the plates are identical. So we have modified this back to the earlier design, even though we can't do anything about the casting number. But I'm going to show you another part that we're going to modify this morning, and I've already done one of those, and that is this brake shaft support. Now this particular brake shaft support, as you can see here, has some differences to the one I modified. And I'm going to show you the picture of the part in the catalog that I based this modification off of. But the differences are this. This DI did not have pedals on the turning brakes. What it had is this brake shaft would come through, bolts onto this plate right there. It comes through this right here, and you had this lever. And the only way that you could set the brakes was with the big hand lever that was back on the rear end of the tractor. Now, when the pedals arrived for the turning brake system, that caused there to have to be a modification to this, and it turned into this casting right here. So the interesting thing about this is the casting and the part number on this particular part did not change. It still is the D2587R, even though now it has a post for a return spring for the pedal. The top of the bottom of the pedal would hook back into the I guess it would hook in more or less right here. Yeah, it would hook in like that. And it also has pedal stops on both sides. Now, this DI that I have has got a kind of an interesting story to it. If you go numerically, it's the second to the last one that was produced with these brake levers here. As far as build dates, it's the last one that was produced with these levers, because this tractor was produced a week after the tractor that had the consecutive serial number plate behind it. So we're right at the tail end of these brake lever pieces. So consequently, a piece like this would be near impossible to find, because you would have to go back to before they produced the brake pedals, and then those were almost all DIs, and that's been the issue all along with the brakes. So I'm going to show you how I modified this one, and we're going to modify this one today to make it appearance-wise like we needed for this DI tractor. So modifying these cast parts isn't difficult. You just need to take your time. So the first thing I'm going to do is bolt it to the workbench. And it's going to get a little bit noisy, so I have my earplugs, and of course I've got my safety glasses on. And we're going to trim as much of the excess of these 3 different protrusions off of this before we get the grinder to going on it. Okay, now we're ready to set this up in the vise to hold it, and we'll start massaging some of this excess off of the casting. I can do it like that for now. All right, back to more noise. Whoops. Safety first. All right, here we go. I think that'll work. Man, that grinder gets hot. I'm gonna go over my grind marks right fast with the flap wheel, and then I'll show you another trick that I use on cast to help make it look like it should. Once again, safety first. Now, as you can see, after we've went over this with the flap wheel, it leaves a shiny surface. I'm going to show you what I use to help put some of this texture back into the surface, and this works fairly well directly on cast iron, but it really works well if you've had to braze cast iron back together. And that is a needle scaler. So let me fire up the compressor and we'll see how we do here. You can see it puts a little bit of texture right back into the surface. It's I think once you get primer on that it'll be difficult to see. We'll go ahead and get the other two sides done. So I think that turned out pretty well for the parts not being available and them being on the back side of the brake backing plate and being down under the tractor. I really don't think anyone is going to have an issue with that. I might also say, and might also point out a couple other things. As happened in the last DI video, you can see that the brakes on the DIs are a lot more massive, but there are a few differences in the brake parts versus the other tractors, and most of it is just dimensional, I mean as far as size. But a couple of things that you may notice, the brake adjusters on the DI, instead of having the flutes machined in them, they're smooth, and so are the ends of the pins that goes out and pushes on the brake shoes to adjust. So that is one difference, plus they're quite a bit bigger around. Rollers are bigger, everything else. These brakes also take this torque arm, one on each side, to stabilize the brake backing plate. I've got a couple other parts that I need to just go to the machine shop and get a couple pieces of steel. These are this is the washer for right here over this slotted area. Fits in here, the bolts go through that. That's not worth saving, so that'll be an easy fix. I think that is like 1/8 by 1.25 inches flat, so we've got that to do. So I just wanted to bring you along and show you that if you get in a situation where the parts aren't quite right, you can sometimes step in and make modifications and get things situated to where it'll work for you. And oh yeah, I forgot one more thing in all of this. Let me show you what came in. We now have the seat for the DI. And I am very, very pleased to get it. And I'd like to thank J.R. Bruner for being willing to build me one of these. I'm not sure where else I would get one, but I mean the seat cushion is absolutely fabulous. And so really pleased to have another piece procured for the DI. So I'm really happy about that. So I guess that'll be a wrap for today. I got to thinking after I pulled this seat out of the box, we have been very blessed to be able to find the missing parts that were needed on the DI. You know, the first major thing that we were missing was the 28-2 sprockets. Well, they came about through not only local friends, but through contacts of other friends in another state. So we got those. Was able to get the seat from JR. Really appreciate that. But I'm still looking for the wheel centers for the 28-inch wheels. And those, if you're not familiar by now, came out on the DIs, the unstyled Ds, and the early style Ds. So if anyone has any leads on any one of those tractors that has 28-inch wheel brakes on the back, I am really interested. Otherwise, we may have to take matters in our own hands and do something, except on a much larger scale than that we did over here on the table with these smaller brake parts. So we'll see what we find with that. But other than that, that's going to be a wrap today. from Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. It's already getting warm, and so we're going to close this out. I appreciate everybody liking, subscribing, and commenting. I really enjoy all of the interaction that we get on the channel. So with that, that's going to be a wrap on this episode of the DI Story. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
The sun is shining bright like a colorful aurora. It paints the world in hues of orange and white and more. I'm gonna start packing my bag. I'm leaving all worries behind. Let's go, I need to get my own summer style back.